Tibet. That's where we're now going to line up a little bit. We'll circle back around to it by the end of how does Tibet sit with China. It's called the Autonomous Region of Tibet in China. I don't know how autonomous it really is. China, to get into Tibet, you have to get a visa for China, which is like a 5-page application. Then you have to get a travel permit to get into Tibet, and you also have to be with a company that is authorized by the Chinese government to go into Tibet, and you have to stay with that company. That was where Viking came in. They were my entree to get in there. And when we were traveling, flying some boat stuff between the cities in China, Tina, our guide, most of the guides take English names. Tina, our guide, she just handed us our ticket in the airport, and we just go up to the counter and we were checked in. To get into Tibet, it took Tina and her clipboard and all of our applications, which were like 7 pages long for like 15 of us, going through it where the agents, which was also then some sort of probably TSA kind of function, going through to make sure the paperwork took about 10 minutes per us, and there were 15 of us, 150 minutes to get us just past this one little point. So, getting into Tibet, China is an interesting question. Won't say much until the end. Can we get that to roll as it's an actual, we don't have to, but it's an actual video. Oh, good. We got music. Go back and just cut the music out. Just try it. At the airport, we were met by our Tibetan guide, in addition to our Viking guide, and that's Pemba. Pemba's name means Wednesday, maybe Saturday, I forget which. But what's interesting, that's his entire name. And there's lots of Pembas in Tibet. It's like, okay, how do you differentiate yourself from this Pemba? So usually you start referring to your mom and dad, maybe your kids. So this is a little bit of that culture. Lots of Pembas, a lot of people with the same name. So there's a real connection that way. And the other thing that can you go back at least? One more. What Pemba's got is he's got these ceremonial, these devotional scars, long white scars. And you're going to see one slide that shows it in orange. And it's sort of like when you go to Hawaii and you get a lei, it's a ceremony where, and Pemba went around the entire bus and put the scarves on all of us. And so I still have that scarf. I'm keeping that scarf, but I got an additional one through someone else greeting us. But this is the way you're greeted when you come to Tibet, when you come to Lhasa. And Pemba was with us the entire time, and he's gentle and loving and compassionate, or at least I make that up, because that's the way I was treated the whole time I was in Lhasa. It was really lovely. Continue on. The airport is about 30 miles from Lhasa itself, and so we go over this river. I think it's the Sangpo. I'd have to look at my notes to make sure. And in the river is a big lotus. Lotus is a very typical symbol of Buddhism. Comes from the muck and the mire and turns into this glorious thing, and that's our evolution as humans, maybe if we really pay attention to God or Buddha or whoever we're paying attention to. And then tourism is now 50% of Tibet's economy. Tourism is a big deal now. Now, it's very limited still. Their economy is still quite small, but this is the main lobby of pretty much the only hotel in Lhasa. They did have a Holiday Inn, but it's shut down, and sort of couldn't get through some of the maybe quasi-political words about why the Holiday Inn wasn't there anymore and why this one is here, and it got a little less transparent. So I don't have all the answers on some of those things. Incense is a big part of their lives, and there it was in the lobby. Some of it actually burning, some of it was just decorational. The other thing you're going to see kind of everywhere, and we'll get into that in the next slide, is lamps, yak butter lamps. Yep, yaks. That's a big part of their whole life. And to me, the equivalent is how bison are integral for some of our Native American tribes. The Tibetans use yaks for everything from transportation down to yak tails that they traded in. There were big trade routes that went through Tibet, despite all the, how do you get through the geography? There were big trade routes, and yak tails was one of the big things they were trading out. Furs, musk, gold, those were some of the things that they would trade out, and meats, because yaks are also used for the meat. They do also grow and raise sheep, goats, some cattle, and the other agricultural things is barley is grown, and that is a main source of food stuff for them is barley, and I'll describe that in a second. But also there's some wheat that's grown. Some of the Buddhists do eat meats, but a lot of the Buddhists don't. So you might see a differentiation there. They're gorgeous animals, these yaks are. So anyway, and they were right there in the plain areas, plains on either side of the rivers, but they were never close enough. This is from a video that was in the lobby. It was pretty. Keep going. And you'll find yak stuff everywhere in the souvenirs. Again, maybe a little bit for the tourism, but yaks are central to that next one. Architecturally, this is what Lhasa looks like. The white, and then at the top, we'll get some different amounts of it, but it's a maroon color that kind of tops all of the buildings. And these big white walls, stone, you'll see how this, in some ways, looks just like the big Potala Palace. And the Potala Palace, the Zhongkang Temple, those are the two big tourist things that sort of either most of us go for or have heard about when we talk about Lhasa. Go back just one more. Even to the point where these are representations of prayer wheels, and prayer wheels are everywhere so that you can do a prayer, you know, at 10:45 as you're walking into your dentist or whatever. But they're light poles for the street. So they're just kind of a representation of prayer wheel. Look at some of the little ones. Yeah, go. And again, monks just absolutely touristing everywhere. Next one. There is a store. There's all parts of a yak up there on top here. And that's saying that this store specializes in everything yak, from the clothing made from the yak to whatever. And the other thing that you're seeing that's very classic in Lhasa is motorcycle, scooters. China has really started drifting away from the bicycle culture we sort of think of about China. It's not as prevalent. The Chinese have gotten into consumerism to capitalism big time, and cars are it and clothing is it. Now those are some of the two big differences you're going to see. Now, there are cars in Lhasa, but it's about a 50-50 mix, whereas scooters in China, maybe 5% of the vehicles out there were scooters and 95% were cars. Big ones, big SUVs. It was kind of crazy. Okay, there's a katak, one of the devotional scars, just there on the door handle. Now this is a part of them even opening a door. That's what I found in Tibet. That architecture, those aspects you were seeing of the lot of gilding, that's classic. There's the gilding. These big brass door knockers, rub them for good luck before you go in. So there's also a lot of kind of naturalistic, and there is a different religion that's in Tibet. It's called the Bun, B-O-umlauted-N, and I can't quite pronounce it right. And it weaves in with their Buddhism just all over the place, but it'd be like a Native American that is a Christian and has their own native religion and just, you know, uses it simultaneously all the time. So yeah, rub the brass to have good luck and put a devotional scarf out there while you're at it. Souvenir shop, and all things yak on this one picture, you know, the kind of George O'Keeffe version of the skull up there, and there are parts of yak hanging on little watch fobs or key fobs and stuff like that. Next one. This is the other thing that you'll see that's so vastly different from China is almost everyone is in some form of what I call native dress. They've got lots of cultures, three different regions, in three big regions in Tibet based on their agriculture and animal husbandry. There's the big mountain regions, And that's where you'll get the yaks down low grazing in the wintertime, but up high grazing in the summertime, and some of the other animals, maybe some goats, maybe some sheep, stuff like that. Then there's a middle region, which is what you saw of the flat plains areas with grasslands on the side. But there is a third region that is down by that, where all the rivers were coming into the Brahmaputra in India. Down in that region, Pema described it as more rolling. So maybe it's like the Midwest, but he said there's a lot of trees down there. And I didn't ascertain whether they were more deciduous or more coniferous, but they grow a lot of nuts and fruit down there. So I'm guessing deciduous trees. And they probably have more water down there because they're, at a different climate. But the mountainous region, very arid, life is sparse up there. And so consequently, think of the geography, they also then have lots of different, I don't know if you call them cultures or just like we have Midwesterners and Texans and Deep South and New Englanders and the Northwest, where we all might have some different accents and maybe customs. So you'll see a lot of different clothing, and where we're at right now, we're in central Lhasa, and we're in what's called the Bar Khor area. And the Bar Khor area is a 1 kilometer circle, which is where the pilgrims come to, and or locals come to. Pilgrimage is central to the Buddhists. So this pilgrimage is, they're coming into the Bar Khor area, and the Jokang temple is right in the middle of Bar Khor. But there's big circumambulation, and everybody's going around, and so you'll see in the square off to the side, people sitting down and resting, and you just see all manner of clothing. And it's just a delight for the eyes. So here's a couple of women, these big aprons, and then underneath are usually skirts, black. And then what's on top, you'll see there's some fun variety. Gentleman has a lot of fur on. We'll see that some are wearing that as we continue on. So some different aprons there. You'll see a lot of them wearing hats. We're at 12,000 feet, so sunburn is, they're dark complected. And Pemba was so cute when he'd take his hat off. He's kind of whitish here, or kind of latte colored, but boy is he ever a dark brown here. That sun is very intense. They almost all wear hats. They're very conscious of that. Again, another monk. Now, this one I'm making up. I don't know this for a fact, but he's wearing a yellow hat, and the yellow hat is a common moniker, a common way of talking about the Gelug school of Buddhism. So he may be a Gelug monk. I don't know that exactly, but when you look at some of the pictures of big ceremonies with the Dalai Lama, they wear these big mohawk kind of yellow hats. That's the yellow school, they'll call it. The yellow school of Buddhism. It's still Tibetan, it's still the Gelug school. There's the Jokang temple. So here you're seeing that same look that was even just in the downtown business buildings. White walls, stone, but lots of that maroon color, lots of that color. And the other thing that you're going to see that's consistent is black around the windows, and we'll get to that in a bit. Gold tile roofs. These architectural styles are a combination of Nepal and a combination of the Tang dynasty, so think the Forbidden City in Beijing. You'll see some similarities there. This is the circumambulation, so people are on the park, now I've lost the word, anyway, that Bar Khor, circumambulation, next one. Out of focus, but there's the orange scars, just to remind me to say it, next one. This one was fun because we've got native dark skirts, the apron is what I'll call it, and P.S. I've got a couple of the weaving styles. They seem to be maybe for your district, you might have a consistent pattern here, because you go into any one of the fabric stores, and there are lots of them, because these people are sewing their own clothes a lot. But you'll find this pattern everywhere in all of the fabric stores. You'll find this pattern everywhere in all of the fabric stores. So I'm guessing that it's connected to your family lineage or your area or something like that. But tennis shoes, almost all of them wear tennis shoes now. And the other fun thing is not quite as traditional on top. Down and fleece, really common. And a lot of the fleece was Patagonia brand. Next. This now is an inset called the courtyard, if you will, and the Jokang temple is right behind you. This courtyard is now where pilgrims or locals coming in to do their devotions. And for them, the devotion almost always entails kneeling and then even prostration. And they'll do this multiple times over 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour. You know, so there's just this real repetitive atmosphere of it. And one woman, she spoke English, and so I was able to ask, and she said, it helps me focus my meditations. So why are we doing it? You know, because there's still that big debate, is Buddhism, is it a religion or is it a practice? So when I asked her, she said that the prostration for her wasn't religion, it helps her focus her meditations. Anyway, have at it, if you will. Now this is walking in. One thing about most of the temples is you're not allowed to take pictures past a certain point. We were able to take pictures of, who are they again? Those are the big arhats that are going to chase away the evil spirits. These are the ones in the Jokang temple. Keep going. The other thing that you see pretty much everywhere in the temples and the monasteries is this style. We'll see it in the Patala Palace. Lots of red. Red is a very reverent color in these cultures, and lots of gilding. And then the blue and the green is common, and then this kind of opportunity to donate. The opportunities to donate, people will put their money down everywhere. Maybe on a flower, maybe next to a statue that's important to them, maybe just in a donation box. It's their offering plate. Next. And past the arhats, then you get into a courtyard. This is a common configuration in a lot of the temples. Past the courtyard is where then you can't take pictures. You're going to have some of the very important statues, and it's also where people will worship. No pictures allowed, but we'll see one place, the nunnery in Lhasa, allowed you to take pictures of that inner area, and it was just like, great, how nice that I can show this to my friends. This courtyard, the thing that you're seeing here, again, we're back to what's important to these people. Those are yak drapes. Those are drapes that are woven out of yak hair. And it's like, almost like canvas. It is so stiff and durable. And we'll see a blow up of what it looks like when it's woven. But there's applique for those patterns. The gold was allowed only for the royalty, or the royalty made an exception that religious places could have gold to make them close to heaven too, because the royalty might have needed a little bit of help getting up to heaven too. So if you know Navajo weaving, this really looks like Navajo weaving. There's a warp and a weft. It's pretty simple, but boy, is that ever durable stuff. It's really amazing. Yak hair, there's your applique. Keep going. These are just details of the architecture. A lot of figures, colors. There's that maroon color. Next one. A lion in this one. There's our background of what Lhasa looks like. There's your color there. There's a dragon off the corner. A lot of the figures that are really common both in Chinese as well as in the Tibetan architecture. There's the courtyard from the second story. You know, the flowers, they love the beauty of that. Next. And then back on the parkour, we're done with it. Couldn't take pictures, so we'll get to some of the other stuff. But there's some of the natives doing their circumambulation, and they had great furs on. You know, so it's just this absolute smorgasbord of things to see. Now, this is the monastery. Temples where you worship, monasteries where you live. At one point in time for Tibetans, I pulled out 7 years in Tibet, and this is about a gentleman in the 1930s and 40s. He's German, and he was in an Indian concentration camp from World War II, and he escaped, and it was northern India, so he escaped into the Himalayas. He was a mountain climber, so he sort of knew how to do mountains, and for 7 years he cruised around Tibet. One of the things that he said was that the monasteries said even in a village of 3 houses, there would still be a monastery. Monasteries are, and that's where we bump up into the Chinese question again, central to the lifestyle. Monasteries were the schools. You'd send your son there, mostly the guys, mostly the boy would be sent to the school. The monks would take care of them, they would educate them, they would feed them, they would clothe them, and at the end the kid might come out and maybe go to a bigger city to go get medical school training, or maybe go back home and be a more educated who knows what, or may stay and be a monk. But the monasteries were central, and if any of you did the Serviceberry book, you sent your kid to school there, but you also then gave the monastery food or money to be able to continue this big ecology of living in a village together. And at one point there was a Jesuit that came into Lhasa in 1712, plus the British came in, and for about a year they had a battle and then had a treaty, and then it all fell apart. But between the Jesuit in 1700 and the British in 1900, they recorded the population of Lhasa to be somewhere between 20 and 50,000. Now, that's a big difference, but what was cool is both of them, the British and this Jesuit priest, said about half of the population was in the monasteries, as in the monks. Being a monk was very central to Tibet. You know, it was just very central. And that's the other place where we bump up against China. This monastery, most recently, before China put some restrictions on, had about 200 monks. Historically, maybe back 1700s, maybe 10,000, who knows. But it's limited. China has limited them. They're only allowed to have 80 monks in there. So that's not a lot to keep supporting that kind of culture and that kind of lifestyle. But this is the Sarah Monastery. Keep going. That color, and back on the ridge you can see some of the other monastery buildings up on the very tip top. So some of the monastery is also up on the hill. Keep going. And yak butter everything. Yak butter candles, yak butter. Yak butter, number one, yak implies that it's a female, by the way. So you can't say yak and then point to a guy. That doesn't work. But I can't remember the name in Tibetan for the male. But yak butter, you grind up barley and you mix it with thick butter, and from there you can do almost anything. You can eat it, you can turn it into a candle. If you put a wick in there, you can turn it into soap. I mean, it goes everywhere. And there are stores all over Lhasa selling yak butter, everything. Here's the entrance. Keep going. And stupas, indicative of Buddhist devotion, are kind of everywhere. Don't know what this one is for, but go to the next one. This is a stupa-shaped thing, but it's an incense burner, and it's huge. It's John Wayne size. They just keep putting things in there, and so there's kind of always smoke and a cloud and the smell of incense everywhere. And again, it's just connected to everything you do in Tibet and in Lhasa. Next. And here's a great representation of this building style. If you've been in the Southwest, you kind of have a sense of it. Instead of adobe, we've got stone walls. These walls are huge thick. Once we get to the Potala Palace, 15 feet average thickness on these walls. And go back a little bit. Slight lean to them, but what's interesting, I refer back to the windows being black. These ones, it's recessed quite a bit, and the whole thing is painted black. Okay, start thinking physics. Why is it painted black? You're at 12,000 feet. What's it do a lot of the year? It's cold. The black soaks up more heat. And that's also why you have these big fat walls, is because the sun can do a little bit of thermal gain on the walls. And so by the time you get to the cold weather, there's a little more warmth toward the inside. You're hoping to keep it in there and maybe generate some heat out of the stove that'll keep that cold that's starting to encroaching on those thick walls. So this is to help with the climate a lot. Keep going. There we go. This is their temple inside of the Jokhang Monastery. And this is where we weren't allowed to go and take more pictures, but we'll get to the nunnery and see some. But we did get to go into the kitchen and take a picture of their kitchen, which, like I said, one time they were feeding 200. So consequently, there's like 10 billion ladles. There's a whole bunch of pots up there. They're only feeding about 80 now, so it's a lot reduced. And the other thing that a lot of times you'll see with the Buddhists is if you've got these big granitic rocks, big rounded rocks, they're primary canvases to paint one of your bodhisattvas or something that you want to worship up there. So that's what's on these rocks, or more things that they can worship next. And there's one place where the Kataks, devotionals, they wanted to tie it because maybe they're going in, or maybe they're not allowed in, or maybe they're doing their reverence on the porch, the patio there. So, and this is out front of the Sarah Monastery, and it's to remind people of the fable. And I don't have the whole thing in my head this morning, but the fable is individually, none of these could get to some fruit that was way up in the tree. I don't know why the monkey couldn't get up there, but anyway, it's not part of the fable. The fable is that the fruit finally drops down and they're fighting over it. So instead, the elephant digs a hole and the monkey plants the seeds, and then the rabbit waters them, or vice versa. I forget who planted. And then the bird on top does something to take insects off so it grows well. And then once the tree is at a good height, they can all share together. And that's out front of this temple, is this reminder of the fable of sharing together, of friendship, of working together. So, I mean, there's just cool stuff around Tibet everywhere. There's the Potala Palace. The word Potala comes from Mount Potalaka. Mount Potalaka is the legendary home of Avalokiteshvara. So that's why it's called Potala Palace, is to connect to Avalokiteshvara. And boy, I mean, this is a big structure. We're talking about 13 stories to get to here, and then another 13 here. 26 stories. So think Washington Monument kind of. Boy, it's going to be a while getting up the stairs, and there's going to be stairs. There's the White Palace and there's the Red Palace. White Palace was used for administrative functions because there was a king that ruled Sampo. He ruled and brought Tibet together, but he was in the 600s. By 900, those kings ran out of power, and everything kind of went to heck in a handbasket. But the Dalai Lamas, at that point we were at the 5th, started then, because they were, monasteries and they're part of the culture, they started ruling or coordinating things that were going on in Tibet. So from the 5th Dalai Lama on to now we're at the 14th, having centralized power eventually came to Lhasa in the 1600s, and that particular Dalai Lama rebuilt the Potala Palace because that king actually started, but it was like a wooden structure, not this big thing. When they built this one in the 1600s, get this, they put copper in the foundations because this is not avalanche, earthquake territory. And so putting copper in there, this thing has survived like for a long time. So big fat walls, lots of defensive posturing with, we can fend things off because the Dalai Lamas, which is Buddhist, they are now the political power, they're now the economic power, they're now the religious, spiritual, cultural center of Tibet, and Potala is then evocative of all of that there in Lhasa. Keep going. Just showing some of the configuration. There is a round tower on one corner, but big entrance ways that you'll see details of as we go up. Keep going. And going to more prayer wheels. I don't know how this next one's going to come out, but these are kind of, quote, normal-sized prayer wheels. Go to the next one. Yeah, there you can see this prayer wheel. You can't quite see it in the shadow there, but it's that big. I mean, it's huge. It takes up the whole doorway. So prayer wheels are kind of everywhere, and certainly as you go in, we want to be reverent going in because this is part of pilgrimage. Or if you're a tourist, it's a cool thing to do. And those are the two strains that you're going to see going in. Keep going. It's a UNESCO site, so there's the stone from to a designated UNESCO site, and also the Jokhara is also connected to Potala in terms of they're both part of UNESCO designation. Keep going. Whew, that's in the wall that protects the Potala Palace. So you can see how big it is because we're able to walk through these huge passageways. Keep going. And we start in a courtyard. Because there's so many people, they're having to restrict, like so much tourism nowadays, they're having to restrict who's going in. So we had to wait for our time to go up, to struggle up the steps. And God bless Pemmy, he said, if you think you can do it, give it a try, and if you can't, it's all right, you can go down. So, so the goal was hopefully to get into the Patala Palace. Here's a model that shows you where we'll be going. And then once we get here, you'll see the big drapes. We'll go inside, you'll get to see some of the ways that they go up once you're inside. Go up to here, and then there's a courtyard before we then go into the part you can't take pictures of, which is administrative. And then the red part, that was the living quarters of the Dalai Lamas, but it was their winter palace. They had a summer palace down in town. And the yellow is just some coloration. This palace is now a museum. It's not connected to the Dalai Lama because in 1959 he left Tibet and he's down in India, northern India. There's about, they say, a staff of maybe 20 monks that do the maintenance and keep things going, but it is a museum. And if you get a chance or want to, you're not allowed to take pictures inside, but this book, they're the most gorgeous artifacts. And you gotta think the Louvre. 1,000 rooms full of gold and pewter and copper and clay and just all kinds of statues and representations and tapestries and silk walls, hand-painted silk walls. And gee, it's just a knockout. Now, you also have to walk through about at this pace, no photos, so it's kind of like, oh good, there's a book. Oh, I remember that. So I put some paper clips in there. Want to send it around?
Yeah.
Send it around over here? Yeah, paper clips on somewhat, I think, are the prettiest things.
How many steps?
Number I don't know. It's about 26 stories. So a lot. And the other fun thing, that's chalk. Service is also very much part of the Buddhist religion. And once a year they whitewash kind of everything, but they whitewash Patala Palace. And one way you can serve the religion is you can come and paint the palace. And so they'll have guys hanging in mountain climbing equipment and a bunch of whitewash that they create with this white chalk. And you see the color difference. And look at the color difference there. Yeah. So they were just getting ready. They do it about the time of their new year, which is like 7 days long. So it's not a one day kind of New Year's Day thing. There's now where we're on the stairs, and you can see they're really steep. And it takes that all the way from the bottom. We'll turn the corner and go up this way, and we'll see more of those drapes. Keep going. Close up of the drapes, keep going. This, if there's one picture, this is the picture I love the most. This is a pilgrim. She's in this dark purple instead of the black outfit. But what's really cool is she is going up these steep stairs. She's intending to get up to the Patala Palace, and she's got two guys on either side of her to help her. I don't know if they were the nephews or if she hired them, but what's cool is this is her braid, her hair, all the way down to here. That's turquoise. Turquoise is revered by the Tibetans and a little bit pricey because it was considered royalty. And she's got these 7 gorgeous chunks of turquoise in her braid. And I was like, that's a cool picture. You know, the devotion of her going up there. You can see quite steep. You can see the valley that Lhasa is in. We didn't take those stairs, another set we did. Next. There's the big drapes that will be going interior. Next. So here's the interior. It looks very similar to the temple entrances. Next. Silk. And a lot of the history is painted on these silk walls. So that's where you get a lot of the history as well. So it's also a library kind of like thing. It's just a great thing. I don't know if you can tell, but that's a window, recessed, exterior, interior, and that's about 8 feet deep. So we're up high enough that the walls are only 8 feet deep. But again, that recess for thermal issues, it's actually black to, again, try and catch a little bit of heat there. And you can see these stairs are really difficult. I mean, they are all irregular and kind of some of this, and be careful where you step. So it's a real pilgrimage, I'm here to tell you. into that courtyard that I pointed out. We'll be going in here to the White Palace. And once you get into the White Palace, most of the stairs are very much like the stairs you'd find in a submarine. You know, I don't know if I call them a ladder or stairs, but they're steep buggers. And so it's a real challenge. It really is. I never figured out who the ones in white robes are. You just see a lot of fun things in this town. And I like this one. She's got the traditional skirt on, but the upper part, she's got the fleece on, and then she's got the baby carrier. And the baby's in fleece too. Yeah. And you know, gorgeous. Women's hair is just lovely. There's that traditional, and this is a window seat in the bookstore. So, you know, it's just finding these little tidbits everywhere. Keep going. Interesting, I don't know how to interpret this, but the Chinese government has the Potala Palace on the 50 yuan. Yuan is the monetary, is the money you use both in China and Tibet. So they put the Potala Palace on there, you know, a little bit of, you know, smoothing up to the Tibetans there. There we go. Now, last bits of stuff. This is the nunnery, the Sarah nunnery. This is their courtyard, not quite as grand. Keep going. And prayer wheels coming in, and a motorcycle, and a little motorcycle going by out on the main street. Keep going. This is how they do all their washing. They don't have running water. It's a fountain out front. So living as a nun is a bit austere, but we see that same appearance going into their temple to where they worship. Go ahead in. This is what it looks like on the inside. So there's benches everywhere, cushioned. This is where most of them will sit in, you know, a cross-legged pose. And then lots of posts with beautiful hangings. Most of them tapestries, elegant, some very expensive, silks, etc. And then what you'll see around the outside next is a lot of cabinets and lots of cupboards. And in the tops of these, especially in the tops of these cupboards, are all their books. So Tibetans have writing, Buddhists have writing. This is all the Buddhist tenets, all the stories that Buddha said. And it's paper, but then it's protected by a piece of wood, and rawhide to bind it. So that's the repository, and this is how apparently all of the interiors are run like that. Then they'll also have nooks and crannies for statues. Precious things here. You could bring flowers. That would be maybe your donation for that day. So there's just all sorts of function going on here next. And yak, you can say yak butter, but these are cauldrons that are this big. So people may be buying a yak butter sample down at that store at the beginning and bringing it in to add to the wax, essentially, that's burning here. Okay, have you been able to say the name yet? Avalokiteshvara, the thousand-armed god of compassion. So ever so many of the temples, they really revere the statues that they have, and then are set aside like that. Go ahead.
Lisa, we've got about 5 minutes left.
Yeah.
Do you want any questions?
I've got about 2 slides.
2 slides. Oh.
There's Gampo. He was the first king, and this is a cave that's all decorated up, and even revering that king. There's a cave, and they come in and they put these pretty things in there, more of those devotional scarves and money and flowers and that kind of. That's Gampo. He was the first king that united Tibet. So there's just these opportunities everywhere for them to express how Buddhism is important.
It's just American dollars too, I think.
Oh, look at there! Yeah, there. Good catch. I didn't even see that.
And I suppose that's 1,000 yuan.
Got me. I don't know which one it was. It was too much covered. Okay. There you go. You've been to Tibet and back. Yeah.
How did you adjust to the altitude to climb those?
Fabulous question. I took diamox. It's commonly used in climbing circles. People that kind of know about it, medicine. It's a diuretic that helps you adjust altitude quicker. And the other fun thing is that Shangri-La Hotel has a full clinic in the basement, and about 2/3 of our participants were down there a high percentage of their time. They were giving them IVs and all sorts of meds. They didn't even need a prescription because they had one of their medical practitioners. I couldn't tell you what level it was, but that's how some of our troops adjusted to it. I was really lucky that the diamox really helped. Oh, and they have oxygen for you piped through the walls of your room. And if you want to sleep with oxygen at night, you can. And you know, I got one of the Apple Watches, so I was monitoring my pulse oxygen. Yeah, it dropped down, but I didn't get symptoms. So I was like, okay, body just knows that it's at 12,000 feet. That's cool.
How long were you there?
4 days.
4 days.
Yeah. Good question. Thanks. What else?
What language do the people speak in?
Tibetan.
Not Chinese.
Or Mandarin. Those are the two primary languages. Mandarin is, the Han population is the next. If you go to mainland China, Han population is the largest chunk of the population. And it's, you know, probably 80%, and they speak Mandarin. So Mandarin is really predominant for most of the language, but the Tibetans speak Tibetan as much as they can. Yeah. What else?
Did they speak of an afterlife?
Oh yes. Oh yes. The reincarnation is a big deal amongst Buddhists. And so there's a lot that's done to make sure that the body is done correctly, because the body becomes irrelevant, but we got to get the spirit leaving the body correctly so that they can, and there's timing, there's these, you know, Tibetan rituals of the dead kind of thing. The timing is really important to do X, Y, and Z so that the reincarnation can happen correctly. Yeah. It's a big deal. My mom thinks I was reincarnated as a Labrador, so I didn't put that on my bio.
What is the Tibetan book of the dead? Do you know?
Well, it really does spell out their rituals of how to pass from life to reincarnation. So that's what the Tibetan Book of the Dead is about. It's this manuscript. This is what you need to do to make sure you have a chance at reincarnating. So.
Lisa, did you see much Chinese influence there in terms of political control? Was there evidence of that?
There's one slide that I took of this huge plaza with this huge monument, and we'll flip real quick. No, forward. Forward. Keep going. Keep one more. There. Now go to the next one, actually. There it is.
Oh wow.
There's China.
It's right there.
There's China in the Patella Palace. And the really creepy part was 2 days in. I was doing just fine on the internet. China, we've been in China for, I don't know, 10 days. I'm up in Lhasa. 2 days in, suddenly I had zero access. That there was a little error message saying you're not allowed or something to the effect. So I went to the guy in our group he had a VPN, which I don't know anything about, but you would. He had a VPN, and so he was able to get past this problem. But I said, Tom, what's going on? He goes, oh, the Chinese found you. So there's this real subtle, where is it, you know, the 80 monks in the monastery now. So there's these places, and you sort of, from a politeness standpoint, you didn't ask.
Sure.
Because this population, they're so kind, they're so polite that it's like, nah, I don't need that. Yeah. That's where you feel it.
Yeah.
You know, it's there. Yeah, it's there. Other questions?
Any other questions?
Could you go back a couple of slides? That was a beautiful picture of the
Palace?
At night? One more.
So,
And that's Tina and that's Joanne, and they're with you all the time. So is that, I don't know, is that because it's useful and helpful, or is it because they need to be there politically? I don't know.
maybe both.
Both, yeah.
Any other questions?
What else?
Well, thank you so
I
much.
so
for being
enjoyed
here.
it. Thank you, Rob. That was cool.
Whirlwind tour.
Whirlwind tour.
Nice to meet you.
Because he was on the side of me where I read my couple just
No, on this screen, on this screen, it doesn't want to show up.
Something's different about this.
wonderful.
Thanks for dating.
I didn't win this, but it wasn't bad.
It was very impressive, and it's like I'm very impressed.
Thank you.
Tibetans love this because they love
I want to find out what time that was at.
and they love the amateurs.
Oh, that's hard to see. What's the time of the 2025?
Super
I really appreciate the social life.
I got company for that. Thanks, yeah, it is.
Yeah, how are you?
Good.
What? Oh, thank you. It was great fun being able to share. No, and also, don't thank you very much. Luckily, I didn't have to refer to it, but it was there if I needed it.
Lisa, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I was right here.
Telling stories is one of my things I'm supposed to do.
Well, there's so much more than the slideshow. There's so much depth and stories and history.
I love researching and learning, and so
I can tell.
I love teaching what I know.
This shows.
Thanks. And again, your help was so cool.
Oh, yeah, no problem. We got through it, didn't we?
Yeah, you did a good job.
Yeah.
All right, let's get you guys packaged up.